when situations like we're facing right now, where airspace closes, travel, becomes limited, the regional tensions escalate, what should an organization have in place before a situation like this happens?
Preparedness is everything. When the crisis hit, it's obviously too late. Understanding that you need to account for your people, communicate clear guidance.
When a crisis unfolds so rapidly, what does the first 24 hours look like?
You need to move away from confusion, provide clarity, account for your people and their well-being. Even if you don't have all the information, you show up. Clear voice, keeping your calm, make well-being as well as crisis preparedness a board-level issue. Bottom line, this is a leadership choice.
Over the past few years, businesses have realized something quickly. Crisis unfolds without initiating, and the situation is flipped, and you're left with no choice but to adapt and be dynamic. Flights get rerouted, regions become unstable suddenly, and companies that operate globally have to make quick decisions about their people, their operations, and their safety. For founders and business leaders, the question becomes, how do you continue operating your business in an environment that feels uncertain? Today, I'm joined by Sebastien Bedu, General Manager for the Middle East at International SOS, a company that works with organizations around the globe to help manage health, security, and business continuity services. And today, we're not just talking about travel. We're talking about how companies can think, plan, and even lead when the environment they're operating in can shift very quickly. Welcome, Sebastien.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for giving us your time and being on this podcast. Sebastien, many companies today operate across borders with teams operating internationally, supply chains stretching across regions. How has the nature of risk changed for businesses in recent years?
Thank you very much for having me, Nikita. It's a pleasure to be on the podcast today. And I just wanted to start by saying that I'm immensely proud to be able to articulate with you today and with others the work that our teams are doing on a daily basis, especially amidst the current escalations in the region. Our teams are working day and night, sincerely around the clock, to support our clients in the region, to help them with their mobility, just like you mentioned, but also with sometimes how to protect their people and make sure that their operations keep running. And this is why, for me, it's an absolute privilege to be able to spread the word and what International SOS and their people are working on as this crisis unfolds in front of our eyes. So risk have fundamentally changed over the years. It's not that it's more frequent. It's mostly that risk have been converging. They are accelerating. Geopolitical tensions, extreme weather, cyber threats, everything is happening at the exact same time. So this convergence of risk and the acceleration of the pace is what is currently impacting the organizations that we work with on a daily basis. And obviously, the way you do business in 2026 is not the way you do business in 2020, and certainly not the way you were doing business at our parents' time. So we need to be agile, we need to be flexible. Mobility and interconnection is key at the minute. So we need to be ready to face a very different landscape.
Yeah, I completely agree. I feel like the world post 2020 is a different world from anything before, and so many things you mentioned is something I'm going to, discover more in the podcast. But I want to ask you, for companies operating in the Middle East, are there any unique challenges that leaders face?
No region is immune to crisis. And indeed, we had our fair share in the Middle East over the past few years, but the Middle East is extremely resilient. And I want to note that the government of the UAE has been doing an amazing job to protect their citizens, their residents. And I want to recognize for the feeling that we are safe, we are taken care of, despite the challenges and the geopolitical tensions that we can't ignore. So doing business in that environment is obviously an additional challenge that many organizations in other parts of the world may not face. Like we've just mentioned a second ago, geopolitical tensions now happen at the same time as extreme weather. Nothing prevents a rain episode to hit the UAE in the foreseen future while we are dealing with another crisis.
Right.
So these aggregation of risk, everything happening at the same time, is obviously an additional complexity for the Middle Eastern entrepreneurs and organizations operating in the Middle East to deal with.
Yeah, but I have to echo that sentiment as somebody who's born and raised in the UAE.
Bless you.
And I know you've spent 15 years. And I think the word you used, resilient, is exactly how I describe the leadership of this country. Because I know times are tough. It are times that we've never seen. But somehow there's this innate faith in me that, they are doing their best, and we've seen them, do the best year on year. But hopefully we'll be out of this. But thankfully we have, the teams at International SOS to help us navigate through times of these crises. Going back to some of the points you mentioned about the geopolitical tension, when situations like we're facing right now, where airspace closes, travel, becomes limited, the regional tensions escalate, what should an organization have in place before a situation like this happens?
Preparedness is everything. You absolutely need to take into consideration that elements need to be robust enough for when the crisis unfolds, because when the crisis hits, it's obviously too late for you to react. You're going to be in panic mode, you're going to create anxiety, your communication plans are not going to be ready. So having a plan in place is of utmost importance. I think that the companies and the organization that will emerge stronger, or the strongest out of this crisis, are the ones that had plan in place, that understand that risk is complex, multifaceted, that it accelerates, and that also give the right ownership to their leadership so they can voice a message, just like the UAE is doing at the minute for us living in Dubai and in the other Emirates. So everything becomes actionable and we can face the crisis with our best abilities. It's not an easy task. But preparedness is absolutely key.
You mentioned there are some elements when it comes to preparedness. Are there any that come to your mind that we can flag to any of the listeners?
Absolutely. Crisis management plans, business continuity plans, making sure that you have your comms ready, you know what to do when a crisis hits, understanding that you need to account for your people, focus on their well-being, communicate clear guidance from the get-go. The first 24 hours in the crisis are absolutely paramount. And this is usually defining your result in the very first day. If you fail to plan, you're most probably gonna plan to fail. And it's very true, especially in a region where things can go very different.
Rapidly.
Very rapidly, absolutely.
You mentioned it, but my next question was actually, when a crisis unfolds so rapidly, what does the first 24 hours look like?
You need to move away from confusion, provide clarity, being able to, like we said, account for your people and their well-being, provide guidance. Do we shelter in place? Do we work remotely? What differentiate false information and misinformation from what is factual, what is underground? So you need to be able to provide support to your teams and intelligence-led information, so you can provide an actionable message that will support everybody in this very difficult time. If you harness the first 24 hours, good are the chances that you will deal with the crisis positively.
We were going through this, what those first 24 hours was. And I think one thing that I can say for my company was, I think we were just communicating. We were listening to each other. We were asking each other, hey, are you okay? Are you at home? Maybe I have a selfish reason for this podcast where I will learn more and see what preparedness steps I can take for my organization. But I think communication plays a key role, doesn't it?
It's the most powerful tool. Being concise, sending an actionable message. It's the voice of the leadership. So it's basically the voice of the organization that is channeled to the people that are potentially struggling with a situation that they've never lived. You said it yourself, you're a Dubai kid, right? So you probably lived 25 years of your existence in the UAE. You've never faced a situation like we're facing these days. But because the government of the UAE is using official channels to reassure us that the situation is under control, you feel safe.
Absolutely.
I feel safe. Our families feel safe. And this is a masterclass in terms of communication. And it's something I think we need to mention loud and clear.
Yeah, I love how you said that. It is. I think UAE is literally setting a masterclass in communication. I love how you put it. I'm going to give you a scenario which unfortunately we had to go through, but I think this is the core strength of a company like International SOS. Imagine a company has team members that were working globally and the tension in the region escalates and they get stuck. What should be the first priority of the organization if they have employees in this position?
So it's a great question because it's very applicable. It happens to so many of us. And the aviation industry is usually the first impacted by tensions because airport can probably stop working or airspace are restricted.
Yeah.
And you need to then consider the additional options to move your personnel, your staff. Could be land, could be maritime options. But back to your question, the first thing is to check on them. Are they in danger where they stay? If they're not, it might be a good option to wait a few days and shelter in place to make sure that once the situation stabilizes, you can bring them back if the airspace is reopened. Rushing back people into country might not be the best solution depending on the conditions. If it's dangerous for them to come back, or if it is extremely costly for a very little benefit to your operations, and more importantly for them, you might want to work on different options, like working remotely for a little while, offering flexibility to these employees of yours. I can share a little story. I was myself stuck outside of the UAE at the start of the conflict. I was traveling for business for a meeting I couldn't miss. And on the Saturday when it happened, I was supposed to return, I couldn't. And I want to say that the work that has been done by my company in collaboration with the airline of choice that is flying the UAE sky so brilliantly allowed us to find a solution for me to come back after only a few days when it was the right moment to do so. So I'm sure it's the same thing you did with your team, making sure that they were okay, that their well-being was taken care of. And then when it was time to bring them back to their family, you could do it in a safe manner.
Yes, absolutely. Exactly. That's exactly what I did. I kind of feel proud that, we operated in the right way. So what practical steps should an organization take now after all these learnings to be better prepared for the next crisis, if there has to be one?
There will be other crises. No region, no parts of the world is immune to crisis. And it might not be geopolitical tensions, it could be something else. Preparedness. And I'm going to sound like a broken record, but I don't mind. Don't let a good crisis go to waste. I think that was Churchill who used to say that, right? So if you can take lessons from the current situation that we are facing right now, is invest in your preparedness, allocate the right budget, give ownership to the right teams so they prepare in advance. Having learned from what has happened over the past week here, for instance, lessons learned are extremely important so you can have a more robust plans in place next time around, improve your business continuity plans, your BCPs, and be better prepared next time something happens, because something will happen at some point.
Yeah.
So getting ready to make sure that something that has happened a week ago is not going to waste. Learn from it, prepare, and next time you'll do better.
You mentioned two keywords that are going to lead me to my next segments. The first one being budget. Now look, when it comes to bigger corporations, multinational companies, they have the funds to even have risk management teams in place. But let's say founder-led businesses, smaller businesses, what is it that they can do to be better prepared for risk?
I think that for as long as leaders like yourself are responsible for the well-being of staff members, having a travel risk management policy in place is an absolute must. Whether it's with your travel agency or with providers, assistant providers like International SOS, understanding that you cannot take mobility lightly is absolutely key. Protecting your asset, right? Today we see that some people are being impacted physically all across the Middle East, and you cannot ignore blind spots, such as protecting your people and what you operate with. This beautiful studio, for instance. So back to mobility and small businesses. I trust that preparedness applies to everyone. Scenario building is very important, right? So if there's one thing that you could do is build scenarios so you understand that in the unfortunate event, something happens to one of your team members somewhere in the Middle East or here potentially in the UAE, you are ready because you have rehearsed your plan, they're robust. It's not a document that sits on a shelf taking dust somewhere. It's a muscle that you have rehearsed, that you have trained. And I think that's key.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about things I need to do, but that completely makes sense. And I think assessing travel risk, we take it so lightly, right? Like you think, what can happen? So if I were to break it into layman terms, if I may, are you saying also looking at perhaps insurances and travel insurances in place prior to any team members traveling?
It's an ecosystem. Insurances, assistance providers, well-being programs are part of an ecosystem that allow you to take care of your most important asset, which are your people. So all of these elements need to be taken into consideration globally.
Globally,
So
right.
insurance pay the bills, right? Assistant companies like International SOS save lives.
Yeah.
It's a different element, but both are critical and they work hand in hand to make sure that they deliver value.
Absolutely. I mean, if there is a crisis, there's only so much an insurance can do. But if I need real life help, and that's where a company like International SOS would come in, right? To actually get the person out.
I'll give you some stats.
Please.
Okay. Since 28th of February, that Saturday that we will always remember, International SOS has managed more than 3,800 cases for the sake of more than 1,200 different organizations.
Wow.
Which means that people, founders, leaders like yourself, Nikita, understand that when the time comes, calling an assistant provider like International SOS is an absolute must to stay informed, to have reliable information that is intelligence-led and verified, and potentially facilitate movement. In fact, we have managed more than 850 evacuations as of today.
Wow.
To Oman, to other parts of the Middle East. And we have issued in a little more than 10 days now, more than 200 alerts so our clients stay informed. So it's not just about moving for the sake of moving. It's providing information and intel that becomes actionable so you take and make the best decisions as the situation develops.
Wow, that's amazing. I must congratulate you and your team, and that's great work. I think you touched upon this. How does one assess when travel is actually necessary anymore?
Business essentials, are important for any company. Myself, I had to travel. It was something I was deeming personally okay for me to undergo in this period of time. And if business requires you to travel abroad, for as long as there's no alerts, the airspace is not closed, your destination is you're ready to go to the destination you want to work at, I don't believe there's an issue. Mobility is key. Everything is interconnected these days, right? And I think the crisis when airspace are restricted show how interconnected things are. Our operations, our supply chains, and of course, the minute we can't go to Doha so easily, to Riyadh, to Paris, to anywhere in the subcontinent, we feel restrained. But the reality is that we've taken all of this for granted.
Absolutely.
And putting plans in place and having a provider of choice that can help you understand what risk you're facing and potentially then building these plans based on your risk appetite. If you believe that it's okay or if you believe it's not okay, then you can be a bit more robust in the way you build your plans. And of course, having contingency plans. When you go somewhere, make sure that in case you are stuck for a little longer than expected, you know that you are safe, that you know where to go, that you can stay put for a little while. And I think, as I mentioned, contingency plans are an absolute must in this day and age where things are extremely unstable.
And, you mentioned a little about interconnectivity, and I think Dubai is literally, a global business hub. What do you think makes Dubai that?
Dubai is unique. This is why we love it so much.
Yeah.
And I'm very emotional when I speak about it, and not faking it, is that I felt welcome for the past 15 years in a country that is not mine, but I feel and always feel safe in an environment that takes care of us as residents, as guests.
Yeah.
And you've mentioned one keyword. Dubai is a hub. Is a hub for finance, is a hub for travels.
Economy.
It's worldwide economy.
Yeah.
And this is why it's so important that Dubai needs to keep running. And our leaders say it very clearly, right? We will emerge stronger than before. And look at COVID.
Yeah.
How it was handled. It was the end of the world, right?
Yeah.
We all believe that that's it. We are done. A few months later, we were on the beach with masks, with distance learning and safe. And Dubai was the first city/country in the world, if you include the UAE, that was reopening for business, for people to enjoy their life in a very safe manner. So I'm sure it's going to be exactly the same thing with this crisis.
Yeah, it's a matter of time, hopefully. And we've touched upon leadership. And I really want to ask you, what does good leadership look like in times like these?
Guidance, clear voice, keeping your calm, making sure that you channel a message that everybody can understand. Even if you don't have all the information, you show up, you are present, you are in the moment. And having the chance to manage people is a responsibility.
Yeah.
And this is why duty of care is of utmost importance in years like these, in 2026, where everything collides and everything happens at the same time. So leadership is making sure that not only you are at the service of your people, but you are the support system that help them thrive, even in periods of anxiety and difficulties.
Yeah. What does that support system look like?
Sure. So, for instance, opening hotlines for employees that might feel extremely stressed or anxious, because anxiety is real. Our research shows that only 17% of the leaders that we've surveyed say that well-being and anxiety is a top risk for 2026. It shows that there's a lot that leaders should be doing in that space, because stress and anxiety are real things in the region and beyond the region, everywhere in the world.
I think, yeah.
So being open-minded to understand that you're only as good as the support system that you provide to your teams. Take care of your people, they will take care of your operations. So I think that's a key, and that's a lesson for all of us having the responsibility to lead larger teams.
Absolutely.
Just make sure that your door is open, that you listen, and that you channel a message that is actionable and that means something to your teams.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. I feel like I'm also taking a lesson. I'm just making sure that, I do the right. And what mistakes do you often see by leaders?
I think it's the flip coin of communication. When you communicate poorly, then it bites you and it haunts you for a long time. Under communicating, over communicating, not striking the right balance, acting on partial information, unverified information. This is why it's so important. Maybe staying away from social media do not hurt, in times of crisis. So making sure that you are there, and as opposed to, even if it's on Teams, if we can't be together. I remember at the time of COVID, you needed to check in with your team. Actually, it was important to show that you were present. So obviously, mistakes that leaders can do is not showing up in the moment, not being present, and assuming that it's BAU. It's not business as usual.
And if I were to ask, what should organizations do to support mental health and well-being? I know you've mentioned communication and being there, but is there anything else that you've seen in your years of practice?
Putting together programs, that our employees can access at any given point, hotline for them to be able to talk to. I'll use an example, actually.
Please.
So how do you think that supporting this crisis while living in Dubai is looking like for our teams? I'll give you the answer. It's extremely difficult. If they're not robust enough to understand that they support clients while their family is alone at home, potentially exposed to some difficulties, they will not do a great job in front of our clients, right? So I think that supporting your employees through a well-being program and hotlines that they can access at any given point, and also again with the management and the leadership being open to listen and to support, giving flexibility, working arrangements, that's what a support system look like.
I was just going to say flexibility is so important. I mean, if COVID has taught us anything, is that if you have to do something, you can do it from anywhere in the world and remotely. But you'd be shocked, Sebastien. There are still some companies who are enforcing their team members to show up to the office. And I actually have heard stories, because you're right. I don't know what's happening to my child or my husband or my family or my mother back at home while I'm at work, or vice versa, right? And I think amongst all the things you mentioned, along with obviously flexibility, are, for me, I feel like it should be normalized.
Yes, and some companies are more evolved and inclined to be flexible with regards to work from home. But I think in a period where things are uncertain outside, it's one of the first measures you can easily put in place.
Yeah.
And we've seen that it works during COVID. I'll give you our example, right? Essential staff are in the office supporting our clients, manning our assistance center.
Yeah.
All the commercial teams for now are working from home. I have the chance to support these teams, and I go to the office myself, but others can do their job for a week or two perfectly fine from home until the situation stabilizes and we becoming more resilient with regards to what's happening, and we'll go back to the office when it's time to.
Absolutely. No, I appreciate that. For me, just towards the last segment, we play this thing called Mumkin Mantras, where I'm just going to give you, I promise it's going to be easy for you, just like the rest of the interview has. I'm going to say a few phrases, and I just want you to say what comes to your mind. Biggest risk companies underestimate today?
Well-being. 100%.
100%.
I'll go back to the stats. 17% of leaders do not even rank in the top 10.
That shocks me.
And this is shocking indeed.
That's shocking.
But let me say something that I said to a colleague of yours as well. Very recently, I think this topic is being taken very seriously, or much more seriously, in the UAE and in the Middle East at the minute. It used to be a little taboo.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah, it used to.
It used to be a little taboo, no longer.
No longer.
People raise their hand when they don't feel okay.
Yes.
And leaders and organizations put support systems and programs in place to help them. So I think I see it firsthand with partners of ours working in the well-being field,
Right.
contacting us because our clients want to work on these kind of programs. And I welcome that initiative.
Yeah.
It's extremely important.
That's amazing. That's amazing. All right. One thing every company should do before sending employees abroad.
Have a robust travel risk mitigation program in place to make sure that the health and security and the well-being of their employees are accounted for at any given point.
Good point. One leadership habit that helps during uncertainty.
Communication. Communicating clearly, providing true guidance, and making sure that whatever message you're sending is heard, understood, and can be actioned upon.
Amazing. I love that. One misconception companies have about travel risk.
That it's just about paying tickets and that it's just going from point A to point B. Certainly not. And I think the crisis at the minute is showing us that it's much more complex than that, and that true heroes are also the ones that reunite family together when the sky is safe and when it's okay for people to travel. So shout out to all these airlines out there that are helping families and business run while the situation is uncertain.
And just to close, if I may ask, what is the one mindset shift that leaders should make today to better protect their people and their businesses?
Define the right level of budget, give clear ownership to the teams that are responsible for their people, and make well-being as well as crisis preparedness a board level issue. Bottom line, this is a leadership choice.
Yeah, you're right. I love that. Thank you so much. Do you have any closing thoughts?
Thank you very much and stay safe.
Stay safe, stay safe. Thank you so much, Sebastien.
Pleasure.
Thank you.